United States of America, north of Seattle, and my name is Nayaswami Hriman on a beautiful spring day. We are now at stanza or quatrain 53, and I just was over at our farm, Ananda farm here on Camano Island, in order to see our three latest arrivals, 3 pigs, Annabelle, Bubbles, and, I forgot the third one. They have a beautiful little new home with a pig house where they sleep at night. They're very clean and very friendly. They wag their tails when you visit them, and they root about in the soil and seem very, very happy. Also got to climb up on the hill there and look back down at the farm in the newly cleared area for future development, and it was just a lovely time. And I say all that because today's quatrain is a little bit different than that. So I'll read it first. This is quatrain 53. With earth's first clay, they did the last man's need, and then of the last harvest sowed the seed. Yea, the first morning of creation wrote what the last dawn of reckoning shall read.
Stanza 52. Stanza 53. With earth's first clay they did the last man's need, and then of the last harvest sowed the seed. Yea, the first morning of creation wrote what the last dawn of reckoning shall read.
This is a bit obtuse, but it continues along the line of previous quatrains in the last week or more, when we see, if we only had these quatrains, we might have the impression that poor old Omar was world-weary, the ennui of endless rounds of reincarnation, etc., might be his undoing. But of course, in his use and references to the wine of divine joy earlier in the Rubaiyat, we know that he was not world-weary. He was not a cynic, not tired of life. But in his Rubaiyat, he's sharing with us the big picture, as I like to call it. And yet here we are with springtime, at least in the northern hemisphere. We have spring bursting out all over, and we just had Easter Sunday a few days ago. And so the spirit of renewal, the spirit of embracing life, life affirmation, the appreciation of the good things of life, friendship and beauty, etc., stand in a stark contrast to today's quatrain. What he's saying here is that when we first were created so long ago, and we began to sow seeds of desire and attraction and repulsion, by the time of countless lifetimes, we have within ourselves an entire forest or an entire jungle of often conflicting impulses, conflicting past events, conflicting desires for the future, conflicting fears for the future based on past experiences. We are very complicated. And so Omar continues to say to us, step back, friends, step back. The spring comes every year. Every year you get enraptured by the beauties of spring, and then there's summer and the intensity of summer. The 4 seasons roll on and on and on. And if you read the news every day, I used to like to tell this story, and I haven't told it in a while, so I'll tell it again, which is some years ago. I don't remember what the situation was, but I was house painting the inside walls, I suppose, of one of the homes I lived in, and I put the newspaper down on the ground, and as is my wont, I found the newspaper articles more interesting than the painting. That's just me. And so I'd read these articles, and I noticed that the newsprint, this was back when we used to buy newspapers, remember that? And you'd have a stack of them. And so no matter what year or month the newspapers were, when I noticed the dates, it was the same old news, earthquake here and famine over there, and so got elected, and, debates in politics, violence and crime, wars, etc., and occasionally some good news. And so it is, you see. I think one reason to be a student of history is to see these great patterns of life. And as Paramahansa Yogananda wrote in his now famous autobiography of a Yogi, he said, when the soul awakens to the anguishing monotony of the prospect of countless rounds of birth, life, death, rebirth, life, death, and on, then the soul rather cries out, enough already. Not sure the soul says that, but we want surcease. We want to step away from the great wheel of samsara, the great wheel of life with this endless turning. And the turning is such that it's always a little bit different, right? Always a little bit new, a little bit new nuance. And so in the expanded meaning, it's one of the few instances where Yogananda's commentary talks about the inner life, the inner reality of the astral body and the different wheels, the different centers, the levels of consciousness. So our lower consciousness is lower in the body. And the functions that take place lower in the body kind of reflect that. With the heart being the middle point, the heart's energy, desires, and interests, etc., can go down towards the, call it the mud of the senses, if you like, and into possessions and attachments to objects or to people, or the heart's energy can rise and more refined and appreciate, the beauties of spring, for example, just for their own sake, without any desire to own or possess them. And so along the line of our spine, so we look up and we are pleased and happy and accepting and gracious and welcoming and so forth. Or we can look down and be stuck in the mud, okay? So our very bodies are made in such a way that the reality of our life, which is an inner thing, meaning our moods and our point of view, and you get up on the wrong side of the bed, as we like to say, and so you have a bad day. You have a negative attitude and everything's negative. This is easily seen and experienced in life. And so, as I have talked about in these Rubaiyat readings, and as is the teaching of karma, so much of what happens to us, so much of how we respond to life around us is dictated, or at least influenced, by our past actions. And you think of so many countless lives, it's impossible, seemingly, from the outside in anyway, by analysis, which only gives us paralysis, to untie the threads of karma of past actions. And so he talks about going into the great river of life, the great tree of life, which is to say, live more centered in oneself, more aware of one's own reactions and responses, not to quash or suppress them, but only by being presently aware and then seeing the patterns of how we respond to maybe particular individuals or particular circumstances, or maybe we are have a habit or a tendency to be jealous or envious or desirous of things and so on that we don't have. And so when we live more in our own center, we can become increasingly aware. And where is that awareness? Where the center may be within us, but awareness is in the higher centers. And those higher centers are more and more increasingly towards pure consciousness itself, pure awareness without the condition of like or dislike. This is the path of yoga. This is the spiritual path. It's not just yoga. And so Yogananda concludes his commentary by saying, from today onward, let us sow seeds of devotion in the soil of inner silence, where we cease the otherwise ceaseless reactive processes that keep us sprouting new seeds, harvesting the results of those seeds, and it goes on and on. And some people who were created at the dawn of time are still roaming about this planet or other planets, and will still be here when this epoch is withdrawn back into the spirit for a temporary rest before coming back out again. And so let us be still and know. Bless you and keep you, and you will see